Hey everyone. There are several different versions of this video, so make sure that you've clicked on the correct one for your instrument. In this video, I'm going to go over how to read and finger the first notes that we learn on our instrument that are found in your book on page 4. There's also a note guide that I want you to follow along with called Our First Notes, and there's a link to it down below in the lesson on Google Classroom. If you're watching this from YouTube, you're gonna have to go back to Google Classroom. Otherwise, you're looking down below and there's just the description. So I'll have the links there that you need so that you can view the right information for your instrument. This version of the video is for the flute. So if you don't play the flute, you're watching the wrong video. It assumes that you have already watched the video playlist on how to put your flute together and how to make your first sound and how to hold the flute. If you haven't watched those videos, this won't do you much good. Go back and watch those now. Remember that the asynchronous assignments are the important ones. These are the ones you have to watch so that you know what you're doing when we get to live calls. All right. So one of the hardest parts about learning how to play the flute is knowing which of the circles here are buttons and which are not. In the video that I showed you before, the flutist shows you how to hold the flute. She didn't spend a lot of time talking about exactly which of these holes are buttons and which ones are. So if I look closely at the left-hand part of my flute, this first thing is not a button. The second one is, and there's nothing under it. It's just a lever that closes the other hole. So that's button number 1. So skip, and I push a button. The second circle, I also skip, and then there's 2 more buttons, and then there's this lever that sticks out to the side, this pinky key. So your left hand should look like this. Skip, first finger, skip, third and fourth finger. Okay. My thumb lives on the big fat key back there. My left hand, there's a bunch of circles here that I've got to skip, and the last 3 circles before the foot joint, 1, 2, 3, are where my fingers live, and there's these little teeny sliver keys that are between my fingers. So on this, my left hand, skip 1, skip 2, 3. On my right hand, the last 3 circles, 1, 2, 3. For some of you, I put stickers on your flutes already before you borrowed them from Mountain View Middle School. If you're afraid you're going to forget which finger goes where, I'll gladly put stickers on your flute for you. You can come in into school on a Wednesday afternoon from 5 to 7 when I'm here, and I'll gladly set that up for you. Now, the other key point we have to remember when we're holding the flute is the shape of our left hand. You see my finger is bent in a strange shape here because the first joint of my finger, or the bottom joint, is resting against the flute, and that's how I hold it. I'm pushing the flute against my chin with that first joint of my hand, and then I balance the flute with my thumb over here beneath my first finger, and my pinky is on the far pinky key over there. So we've got to make sure our hands in that shape. If we try and hold it with our fingers, it puts our hands in a weird position, and if you have to play notes that don't use very many fingers, you're likely to drop your flute, and that doesn't do us much good at all. All right, so here are the first 5 notes that we're going to learn. Actually, in lesson 1, we only need to worry about the first 3, but I'm going to show you all 5 of them right now. The first note that we learn in our book in line number 1 is F. Now, I know this note is an F because here it has an F printed right in the middle of it, but more importantly, I know that it's an F because the top line of the staff represents the letter F. If you remember, every good boy does fine. So anytime I see a note on the top line, it's going to be an F, whether or not there's a letter printed in the middle of it. Down here, I don't want you to worry about these numbers. We will worry about do, re, mi, fa, so in another lesson. Okay, so this diagram shows me which buttons I need to press to play an F. Black circles are buttons that I press, and then white shapes are buttons that I don't press. So I can see here that I need to hold down my thumb on the big fat thumb key I showed you a second ago. And then 1, 2, 3 fingers on my left hand, 1 finger on my right hand, and this shape over here is the pinky key at the end of the flute. So thumb, 1, 2, 3, 1, pinky. Don't forget which of the circles are buttons and which aren't. We skip this one, first finger, we skip that one, second, third finger, first finger, pinky, and I'll get an F. And the F is going to sound like this. Now, if you get a lower sound instead when you try and play an F like this, there's two things you need to think about. The first thing is speeding up your air, blowing faster air. The second is pushing your chin out just a little bit. So imagine that instead of aiming the air down towards the hole, you're aiming the air up like towards your nose, not all the way into your nose, but think that the airstream is aimed higher. Listen to me change from low to high. If for your first lesson you're getting the low sound instead, it's going to be okay for now, but you want to learn to make that change, and that's one of the things you should be practicing. All right, moving on. The next note is E flat. Do not call it E. E and E flat are two different notes. I know that it's an E flat because this symbol here is a flat sign that tells me that it's flat. Flat means slightly lower than. E would be a little bit higher than the E flat. I know it's an E because, or an E flat, because it says E right in the middle of it, and this space on the staff is always going to be the letter E. It might be E, it might be E flat. Flat sign means flat, that space means the letter E. No matter where I see it in the beginning or the end of a piece of music, that space will equal E flat. And I can see that it's slightly lower than F, it's one notch down. And here's the fingering diagram. Still use the same thumb key, but now the first finger is going to be open. So that finger is going to be pointed up a little bit. And 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So all the other big fingers are down and my pinky. So again, thumb, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, pinky, and I've got my E flat. It should be slightly lower than the F. It should sound like this. Now with that fingering, it shouldn't be possible to get a sound lower than that. If you were blowing super hard, you might get a sound higher than that, but it wouldn't sound very good. That's just not a fingering that resonates at a different octave. The next note, slightly lower, is D. I know it's D because it has the letter D printed in the middle of it, but more importantly, because it is on the fourth line of the staff. Every good boy does fine. Notes that are on this line, no matter where they are on a piece of music, are always going to be the letter D. Down here, I can see the fingering. Thumb, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, which looks a lot like E flat, except this one does not use our pinky. So watch, thumb, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and no pinky. So it's very similar, right? Here's E flat, here is D. Here's E flat, here is D. I've got to make sure that I've got that pinky in the right position or I'm going to get a different note. The D should sound like this. All right, now these next notes aren't in lesson 1, but you are going to need them soon. These fingerings are going to feel a lot different from what I just showed you. Okay, the C has very few keys pressed. You'll see that it uses no thumb key. It uses the first finger on my left hand. No other fingers until I get down here where I have to use my pinky. Now, remember what I told you before, when you hold the flute, then playing a C, you're holding it up with this part of your pointer finger that's pressing against the body of the flute. I can't hold it with my thumb. My thumb has to just hover above the hole. So when I play that C, it should look like this. So you can see my right hand is doing most of the holding with my thumb and my pointer finger, and my left hand, my thumb and my pinky finger, and my left hand, the first finger is holding that button down and it's pushing it against my jaw. When I play the C, it should sound like this. C is another note where it's possible to get both a high and a low sound. The C I just played is the low version of that C. If I do the trick where I push my chin out and blow the air faster, I'll get a C that's actually much higher. Don't worry about being able to find that note yet. That's much, much, much later that we have to learn how to play that sound. The last note, B flat. Sometimes I'll call it do for you guys. Now, I know it's a B flat because it's on the middle line of the staff. Every good boy does fine, right? Every good boy. So anytime I see a note that's on that middle line of the staff, I know it's going to be a B something. This happens to say B in the middle of it, and this one happens to be a B flat. Do not call this note just a plain old B. B is a different note that's slightly higher than this. B flat is slightly lower than the B. You're going to learn B much, 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 much later. The fingering for B flat. Thumb, 1, and then 1, and then pinky. Watch. Thumb, 1, 1, pinky. The first finger on each hand. And the B flat's going to sound like this. So those first notes, one after the other, will sound like this. F, E flat, B, C, B flat. Now, those are the notes you're going to need for everything on the first couple pages of the book. Good luck practicing. After you've watched this video, go on and watch the video about page 4. Thanks for stopping by.